Dan, rather. Dan, come on out. How are you, Dan?
Well, it's not our best time, David.
No. What, do we know anything new, anything that I'm not aware of, anything you have heard in the last 8, 10, 12 hours that we
Well,
should
some
discuss?
very interesting things happened this afternoon. President Bush made what I think is his strongest statement yet when he went to the Pentagon this afternoon. He was Giuliani-esque. I don't think he would mind my saying that.
Yeah.
No. He looked the camera straight in the eye, unblinking, and said, Osama, dead or alive.
Now,
And he also underscored, David, which I think is very important to understand, two things, and the president made this extremely clear. One, this is for the long haul. Wars are won by, in no particular order, firepower, willpower, and staying power. And what President Bush was talking about today, I don't think he could have made it any clearer. That we have the firepower, we've mustered the willpower, and unlike the Gulf War, we will have the staying power. Yeah. That's the message you got out of that. Then,
what do you, how do you answer the question of why didn't it happen already? Why hasn't there been some kind of a strike now? Everybody was hoping, maybe not everybody, maybe I'm speaking for myself, thinking perhaps, you know, Saturday, let's do it Saturday. Why not Saturday? We got a weekend, let's go. Let's do it Saturday. Well, is that a mistake to be too eager? Can you make a mistake by being too eager?
But David, I think we've talked about this before. As a one-time private in the U.S. Marine Corps with perhaps the least distinguished record in the whole history of the Corps, I never know what to say about strategy. I don't mean to make light of it. I don't know the answer to that. I think the answer is, one, when we strike, the president wants to make sure it's an effective strike. And with what we're dealing with here, which is not one man, it's a hydra-headed operation that's in 55 countries around the world. Now, granted, the focus is on, and we should understand, not just Afghanistan, Sudan, Iran, Iraq, Syria, and Libya. Now, the first strike needs to be a very effective strike. I think the answer to your question is, one, they want to make sure that the first strike actually accomplishes something. And then secondly, Colin Powell, who's not to be underestimated in this, because Colin Powell is from that school of military thought that says you don't move until you first have your defensive order of battle in place. That is, let's get our stuff in this country all squared away. And then you don't move until you got your offensive order of battle into position where you can move with overwhelming force. There are other schools of thought, guerrilla warfare, flanking operations. That's what Colin Powell. Colin Powell is, let's don't make the mistake we made in Vietnam. We're going to go, let's really go with force. So I think that's the answer we haven't struck. Now, it's certainly true that even in Afghanistan, which is a terribly impoverished nation, and it's, you know, its people, most of them are as fearful of the Taliban as you are, but in Afghanistan...
How long were you in Afghanistan?
Well, I was there in the 1980s a couple of times, and we walked in and walked out once for, I think, 18 days. I'm not an expert in Afghanistan, but no one should be mistaken. To put even a small number of ground troops in Afghanistan is extremely, extremely dangerous. But they could have, Tuesday night. They could have turned out the lights all over Afghanistan. They could have turned off all communication. Why they didn't do that, we'll have to see later. But I couldn't feel stronger, David, that this is a time for us, and I'm not preaching about it. George Bush is the president. He makes the decisions. And, you know, it's just one American. Wherever he wants me to line up, just tell me where. Yeah. And he'll make the call. I do think we'll see something reasonably strong soon, and strong because President Bush and those around him know that America seethes. And there are an awful lot of people asking the question you did. What are we waiting on? Let's get them.
You mentioned that multi-headed and multi-armed, whatever, in 55 countries, you said. How many people does that represent? Or how many people make up our enemy now? What are we talking about?
No one
Thousands?
knows. No one knows. They specialize in so-called sleeper agents. People come into a country or perhaps reared in the country, and the whole idea is just to seem like everybody else. Maybe be there for a year or two or longer until you get the call or until you move on your own. This is, as President Bush has described it, the first war of the 21st century. It's a twilight war. It's a war to be fought in the shadows. And Secretary of Defense Don Rumsfeld has been underscoring that we Americans, raised on, movies of World War II and the television of the Vietnam era and the great triumph that was the Gulf War, although we didn't have the staying power to finish and get rid of Saddam Hussein, this is different. This is not the kind of war we've ever fought before. And we need to think of it that way because this is in the shadows.
But what does that mean? And I'll tell you, I think I speak for other people when I say the Gulf War, and you describe it as a great triumph, but then you qualify it, and I think that's why people are skeptical. Can we expect another Gulf War where, a day or two later everything over there is fine and back to normal, or will this produce lasting and satisfying results?
I don't know the answer to the last question, but it will be different in this regard. This will be long. The casualties will be greater. Let's face it, we've already had more casualties. 5,000 of our fellow Americans have been killed already. When we talk about casualties, we've suffered casualties, but there will be more. When we send our sons and daughters into this kind of war, into this twilight zone that they're going, there'll be great casualties. Now, it remains to be seen whether we have the staying power. That's basically up to you and me and everybody in the audience and every American, whether we have the staying power, whether we have the will to stay with it is the big question. But you say, well, will it do anything? I certainly think it can, but what would we think of ourselves if we didn't try?
Well, that's the point. Will it do anything, and do we have the determination to make sure it does something? I guess that's what you're talking about.
I think the United States do.
Because everybody second-guessed the commitment in the Gulf War, and then we went back again and had another little mop-up operation, but nothing really substantively has changed there, has it?
No, but look, no. But there's no question. We made a big mistake as a people, as a nation, as a society. We now know it.
Right.
Another few hours and Saddam Hussein might very well have gone to Yemen or the Sudan. But the decision was made to stop it. We all know now it was made to stop it too soon. But that's in the past. This is going to be much longer. This will take years. This may very well take another 4, 8, 10 years. And Americans are noted the world around, for having great courage, having a great military, but the world's view of us in many places with many people is we just don't have the stomach to stick anything out. And it was said, well, we were great during World War II, yeah, but this is a new generation, or they're all spoiled.
It better change. It better
So we're now being put to the test. But I'll tell you this, if they could go down to ground zero here in Lower Manhattan, and you referred to it earlier, and either firemen.
Okay, I'll tell you what.
Well, I can finish.
No, Dan, take care of yourself. We'll be right back here with Dan Rather. Okay, Dan Rather is here. I was talking earlier. These are questions from a dumb guy, so help me out. Zealots motivated by religious fervor. Am I accurate to think that, and is impossible to reconcile? But is that what we're dealing with?
Well,
and if so, what are the events really that have pissed this guy off? What did we do here?
Well, first of all, David, I want to apologize. I'm a pro, and I get paid not to let it show, and I'm sorry about that. Now, to answer your question, and again, this is so important to understand. No, I don't think it's about religious fervor, because this has nothing to do with Islam. This is not Islam.
What the hell are they up to then?
Well, they hate America. They hate us. It isn't that this is one thing that makes this war different. They don't want territory. They don't want what we got. They want to kill us and destroy us. It's a heavy statement, but it's true. They seek to accomplish our death death as a people, as a society,
But why?
and a culture.
Why? Why?
Well,
They don't get cable? What's the problem?
they don't get cable. You know, who can explain madmen and who can explain evil? They see themselves as the world's losers. They would never admit that. They see us, we have everything, we win everything. This is their view of thing. They see themselves as, you know, we should be a great people, but we're not. Mm-hmm. And it drives them batty. That's the only explanation.
And that really is it. That's why we have 5,000 people dead in this city.
We have 5,000.
Envy. It's just envy, jealousy, bitterness.
Deep, abiding hate, which it's very difficult for anyone in Western civilization, much less our United States of America, to understand this kind of hate. You have to see it firsthand. You have to have been among it to understand. There's no rationality to it by our standards. There's no trying to explain it. But I keep coming back to the point, David, it's a mistake to believe this has anything to do with the Islamic religion. Mm-hmm. That these are crazy people. They are haters. They hate us for who and what we are. They don't want anything except to see us dead and see us destroyed.
Yeah, I mean, I'm listening to what you're saying, but do you know anybody alive today who is capable of that? I mean, it's so aberrant and so far afield of what we regard as the human experience. How can it exist at a level large enough to be of any consequence, for God's sake?
I don't have the answer to that question. I come back to some evil is just, it can't be explained.
Are these people happy? Are they joyous now? Are they celebrating?
Oh, absolutely. They're celebrating. God. There's one report, this has not been confirmed, but there's several live reports that there was a cell, one of these cells, across the Hudson River. And they got on this is the report. I emphasize, I don't know this for a fact, but there's several witnesses who say this happened. They got on the roof of the building to look across. They knew what was going to happen. Yeah. They were waiting for it to happen, and when it happened, they celebrated. They jumped for joy to see this happen. It was a great triumph. It's inconceivable to me and to you, but David, this is what we have to understand as a country. We're not dealing with the kind of thing we dealt with in any war we've ever fought before, because we've never dealt with these kinds of hateful, to the core, evil people.
Did this country years ago or currently make some kind of mistake that made us more vulnerable than we knew? Has there been any kind of I think about the FBI. It's run like a high school volleyball team. I think about the CIA. They can't even find the drinking fountain. I mean, have we made mistakes that we should not have made?
Absolutely, and you've touched on some. Look, we spend in excess of $25 billion a year for alleged, supposed intelligence. There's been virtually no accountability for one intelligence failure after another. Sure, everybody has excuses, well, we weren't allowed to do this or that. It's a total abject failure in this case. And you mentioned Mayor Giuliani. One of the things that made the Giuliani administration go is accountability. The mayor's attitude was, I'm going to give you responsibility, but you got accountability. Right. Now, the FBI and the CIA, nobody wants to talk about this, but law enforcement people know it. They barely talk to one another. The CIA keeps things from the FBI keeps things from the CIA. No doubt they'll deny this after this is over, but everybody in law enforcement knows this. And there's kind of a Keystone Cops aspect to this, which has, mistakes we've made. And I mentioned before, look, we ended the Gulf War probably 24 hours too soon. We now know that. Saddam Hussein, we mentioned, if he isn't connected to this, he's connected to any other things. He's part of this hate America thing. You have to understand that Saddam Hussein is somebody I have sat this close eye to eye. When his feet hit the floor every morning, he dreams of leading a victorious Arab army into Jerusalem. And he sees himself as a new Saladin. And his hate is deep for us. I don't even like to use the word hate, but this is what we're dealing with, and we have to wake up. It's a new place now, and we're headed to a new place, David. Time magazine had a wonderful essay this week and said, you know, we're going now to a new place where, you know, even the songs we sing will have a completely different meaning. Example, you know, America the Beautiful. Who can sing now with the same meaning we had before of one stanza of that goes, "Oh, beautiful for patriot's dream, that sees beyond the years, thine alabaster city's gleam, undimmed by human tears." We can never sing that song again that way. David, you've been terrific to have me on tonight. I'm so sorry for this.
Yeah,
You know,
fine.
the hour grows late, but
Yeah, you're
you know,
fine. You know, you're a professional, but good Christ, you're a human being, and my God, to not see this.
thank you. Thank you very much.
I don't, now, the other day, Dick Cheney, who to me seemed like the real deal, Dick Cheney was talking about how counterintelligence and espionage is dirty business, and maybe now we were going to have to get down in the mud with these people. And I thought, well, holy God, I mean, wasn't that the way it was supposed to be? Why aren't we down there with the bad guys? Why don't we? And he said, now, like, okay, all that, the rules are different, but you only know what the bad guys are up to if you're pretending to be a bad guy yourself.
Well, 2 points.
Did that-
Two things. Number one, when did we get our first clue that dealing with these people is a dirty business? But if we behave in Florida, we've lost the golden